Welcome back, one and all, to our RimWorld farming empire. We have quite a bit going on in the beginning of this episode. The biggest thing, as you might have noticed, is the miracle known as childbirth. Yes, indeed, due to the 1 month time skip near the end of last episode, it is actually time for Chief Sherd to have their baby. Hack is actually playing two roles here during the birth. He is actually the father, of course, but is also the doctor as well. Finally, after hours of intense labor, Sherd finally has their beautiful baby boy, a healthy, beautiful baby boy, I might add. Sherd requested that they give the child an ancient Thromboian name, which in the common tongue sounds like Fitzbiro. But given the interesting mutation with the color of the child's skin and the resemblance in the name, I'm going to refer to the child as Spyro. And I must say, I was extremely excited for this child to be born, and as was Hack and as was Sherd, as you can see. Hack wasted zero time and immediately began bonding with his son, as did Sherd. And my true hope is that this beautiful child can bring the pair of them together, and can also hopefully squash any escalation of the tension that's currently going on due to the Thromboian uprising and the goddess. But I suppose that only time will tell what amounts from this ongoing tension. Until then, of course, we must continue our farming empire, and continue we shall. We began planting plenty of rice in our secondary greenhouse to try and help us get through winter. Luckily, by this point, we have made plenty of repairs, and it is once again operational after the Marshall paratroopers attempted to burn it down. It'll take a lot more than a little bit of fire to kill out any of our ambitions. We are here to change the world and to feed the populace. But of course, speaking of which, we have our very own populace to feed, and we also have plenty of chickens, so Harris decided he would begin slaughtering some for us to eat. However, he seemed to enjoy it a little bit too much. Harris may be tamed, but he is still a beast. I suppose it's fine though, whatever satisfies his bloodlust and keeps us all from starving to death this winter. And I must say, we have done so much good with the farming empire. We have fed so many people who are experiencing famine and starvation, but constantly giving away our food is very hard for us to avoid such famines and starvations. So that is why Carol proposed the idea of a lifeline. We are going to build a telegraph, but to do so, of course, we are going to need plenty of components and steel to build a generator for power. That way we can actually power the telegraph. And I hear you asking yourself, what is the purpose of building this machine, and how does that help you avoid starvation and famines? Who would you even communicate with? A good example of who we would contact is our valuable ally Lurkot within the Rebel Alliance. As an absolutely last-ditch effort, if we were all starving to death or needed some type of aid, we could contact them. Luckily, the mountains near the old logging empire have plenty of coal within them, because in Birch's day, they didn't really dig that out and use it for machinery because, well, they didn't have the technology. They mostly burned wood, which means we have plenty of resources to keep us going for a very long time. Speaking of such resources as well, it is finally time for a harvest of our beautiful apple orchard. Honestly, it's a little bit early to be harvesting these apples. We should really wait until they're totally mature, but these are desperate times. Some time later, we ended up receiving a telegraph from the Blue Rock settlement stating that one of their friends were injured while traveling by the RimWorld Marshal Service, and that if we would save them, they would join us. So we decided to send out a small group comprised of Harris and our two newest tribespeople to try and save this person. Besides, we could use all the help that we could get here at the farming empire, even with our limited resources. It was very unusual for the settlement to contact us here though, and they didn't have many details on the person that needed rescuing, but regardless, we decided to help. While our tribespeople were out saving the refugee, though, we ended up receiving a caravan from the Blue Stork tribe. The caravan was of course in need of food, especially with this very harsh winter killing most of their few and scarce crops already. Unfortunately, of course, though, we had very limited resources, so we didn't really have any food to give. Luckily, though, we ended up providing them with some of our livestock so they could slaughter them at their convenience to eat. During this time as well, the leader of the caravan provided Chief Sherd with information about Chief Trust being assassinated. He also explained that the Thromboian goddess is now the leader of the Blue Stork tribe, and that she would be calling upon Sherd and our tribe very soon. Meanwhile, Harris and our two newest recruits begin to approach the incapacitated refugee. However, with that being said, even from a distance, we could tell that this was not the same person, even given the brief description that was described to us from the Blue Rock settlement. Nonetheless, though, this person still appeared to be very injured, so we decided that we would cautiously approach them. We offered to assist her, and of course she agreed. She began frantically explaining that she was attacked by a white figure, and she said that we were not alone. Fortunately, though, we did not see this unknown attacker, and we returned home shortly thereafter. It was quite strange, as the refugee stated that she had no affiliation with the Blue Rock settlement, and after calling them back on the telegraph, they also stated that they had never contacted us. We began wondering if it maybe was some type of elaborate setup to see just what type of force we would muster to rescue someone, or possibly even who would come to rescue them. Nonetheless, though, after returning home, things went back to business as per usual, of course. Until late one evening, on her shift in the guard tower, Lot spotted something way off in the distance. It was the goddess. She was standing out in an opening with two other chieftains and her guard. The very small diplomatic caravan was met at our southern wall of the city. Sherd herself even came out to greet the goddess personally once again. She seemed extremely ecstatic to speak with her once more. The ancient Thromboian was silent for a moment, but then she spoke. "I call upon you, chief, and I call upon your tribe, for you have made a promise to me, a promise to which you stated you would keep. Will you now keep your word to your lord, thy goddess, or will you betray my trust?" Hack seemed disgusted by the ancient's holier-than-thou persona. But of course, all at once, Chief Sherd reassured the Thromboian goddess that she would keep her promise to her. She then invited the goddess, the other leaders, and their escort to all come in somewhere much more comfortable and less cold so that they could discuss further, to which of course the goddess promptly accepted Sherd's generous offer. Hack and Carol, of course, were very worried about working with the goddess and these Thromboian tribes, let alone letting them into our homes. But of course, against their better judgment and advice, that is exactly what Sherd allowed them to do. They all gathered in the dining hall to begin discussing their plans. The goddess tells Sherd of their plan to attack a martial city. She claims that of course she needs the help of the Sherdish tribe. She states that other minor Thromboian tribes are no longer supporting her cause of cleansing the planet of these unholy races. She also states it appears rumors are beginning to spread and that the rebels are catching on to exactly what they're doing here, so they are now hesitant to assist them. She states that because of their dwindling numbers of soldiers, it is time that the Sherdish tribe, the farming empire, goes on the offensive with them. Sherd was more than happy to agree to these terms and to go off to war with the goddess and the others, but she stated that something would need to be done about her husband Hack, as he would not support this cause. The goddess reassured her that she would handle the impid cowboy. The group then began making preparations to head off to war. Just before leaving, though, Hack and Sherd both would kiss their newborn baby son on the head and spend a few last moments with him before they headed out. Hack asked Carol to look over the child for him while they were gone. Carol reassured Hack, of course, that no matter what happens, she would take good care of their beautiful purple boy. She slapped him on the back and said, "Just make sure you come home in one piece." The two of them had a chuckle, and then Hack and Sherd began to depart. We gathered our soldiers just on the outside of our great dining hall. Sherd began to explain the mission to them as a liberation of the town from the evil martial forces. They had been subjugating the populace there for quite some time. We met up with the goddess and her escort just on the outskirts of town before departing the farming empire. By the time that we arrived, the city of Morrisburg was already under siege by the remaining tribes' forces in the coalition. Many tribes, as previously mentioned by the goddess, had already left the coalition due to her leadership. However, the martial soldiers were not alone in battling the coalition of Thromboian tribes. No, they were also being backed up by the Confederacy of Banah, who had also provided several troops to fight off the siege. Coalition forces were being slaughtered in the streets of Morrisburg. The martial soldiers and the Confederacy soldiers began to advance throughout the city to begin pushing the coalition out. Luckily for the coalition, though, reinforcements had arrived. The goddess began liberating one portion of the city so that she could destroy the tank while we liberated another. After hours of battling and liberating the city from the marshals, we met the remaining soldiers in town square. Some of these soldiers were heavily armed with explosive weaponry, and they were becoming desperate. Unfortunately, one of the grenades landed at Nyber, one of our new recruits' feet, and detonated. We had finally managed to push back the remaining soldiers, those of which we did not kill, of course, and finally, the battle was over. The city was liberated. But after arriving in the town center, we saw that the goddess had lined up civilians in a row, none of which were Thromboians, oddly enough. Hack then began to question the goddess on exactly what she was doing with these civilians. The goddess stated that she was cleansing the city and the world of this filth. This was not a liberation. This was a genocide. Yet as Hack looked around, he realized that he and the civilians were the only ones that were shocked by this. Sherd, Harris, they all knew exactly why we were coming here and exactly what the goddess had in store for these people. The goddess looked at Sherd and into her eyes and said that it was time for her to let go of her impid dog. Hack began to beg his wife, "Please, don't do this. Think of us and our child." But unfortunately, his pleading would go upon deaf ears. Sherd then closed her eyes and gave the command. Our beloved impid cowboy was dead. The goddess then turned her attention to the innocent civilians. As it would appear, Hack and Carol had been deceived by the goddess, and even by Sherd and their other tribe members. They all appeared to be extremely complicit, not only with what the goddess was doing to innocent strangers, but with their own friends and family. Even Hack, the father of their newborn child, was not safe. The goddess and the others began to leave the city. Their army had already began returning to camp some hours ago, so it was finally time for them to head back there as well. But they were not alone. They were being followed. The dark and snowy landscape gave Captain Hawthorne the perfect cover. His mission was simple. He was going to use the experimental weapon created for him by the martial scientist to disable and or kill the Thromboian goddess. The splash damage from the weapon managed to hit the goddess. Unfortunately, though, she was not dead as he had hoped for. However, it did appear that her escort had to drag her away from the scene because her armor had been disabled. Unfortunately, though, she, Sherd, and their escort managed to escape the area. Back home, Carol was tending to the young child when she received contact from the Rebel Alliance. It was Blitz who was contacting us, and he had stated that he had some horrible news. He stated that their spies within Morrisburg City confirmed that Hack was killed, and Sherd was nowhere to be found. And unfortunately, it appeared that our other tribe's people were also absent from the city. Carol found it extremely strange that Hack's corpse was the only one to be found. She thought it may be possible that Sherd and the others were taken prisoner. Blitz stated that they would continue investigating the situation, and that if they were to hear something more, she'll be the first to know about it. Until then, they plan on sending rebel soldiers to the farming empire to ensure her safety with the child. One of the goddess's royal guards approached her as she lined the tent. He appeared to worry for her health. She simply stated that her armor was damaged and it would take 4 or 5 days to recuperate. She said during this time she would be extremely weak and but a fraction of her normal strength, because throughout all these years her armor was the only thing that had kept her alive. She said while in her sarcophagus before being awoken, her armor kept her in something of a cryostasis, and that ever since she awoke her armor has been feeding off her life force, slowly draining her. Her royal guard reassured her not to worry. They would step up all the guards throughout the camp, that way we could ensure her safety. However, the goddess, oddly enough, advised against doing this. She said to let the men sleep, for they could not stop what was to come. Her royal guard was obviously very puzzled by this request and began asking her more and more questions about what she meant and what she would like for them to do. She simply asked him to leave her now, as she was very tired and needed to rest. There would be much to do within the following hours.